Good evening. Good evening. We're just a few moments past 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to honor your time this evening and make sure that we maximize the time that you've set aside to be here this evening. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Amy Cashwell, very proud superintendent of Henrico County Public Schools. And on behalf of the whole school division, and by the way, I will be joined by one of our school board members later, Mrs. Alicia Atkins from the Verina District will be here. But we want to say thank you to all of you who have dedicated yet another evening to be part of this redistricting process. So as you know, we are entering the home stretch. The committee, made up of volunteer parents and teachers and interested citizens just like you, have been working many long nights since September. They've been analyzing data and studying the community comments. And later, Matthew Cropper will take the stage, and he's going to tell you that options D4 and E4 represent many changes since the last time that the maps were put on display back in November. And tonight, your input is crucial. Feedback the committee receives at these sessions will lead to more discussion, analysis, and perhaps even more changes to these options. The committee is expected to make its final recommendation to the school board at the end of April, and then the board would vote on the recommendation by the end of May. So tonight will not be the last chance for public input. We're still hearing from you at our school board monthly meetings, plus we have at least 2 public hearings dedicated to this process in May. So I encourage you to be a part of those opportunities as well. The redistricting process is purposefully long and open in order for our community to really put us beneath the microscope and scrutinize the details. Ultimately, it involves difficult choices in order to meet the school division's goals for today, for tomorrow, and for the foreseeable future. So no matter the outcome, what's been made clear throughout the past several months is the passion that this community, that our community has for education, and I'm grateful for that. And that's why I appreciate that so many of you are here this evening. So in closing, I want to share again my gratitude with the redistricting committee and to you all as well for coming out tonight, particularly given the nice weather we have this evening. And I know many family commitments and other commitments you probably have that were hanging in the balance. So thank you for being engaged and for being informed. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matthew Cropper with Cropper GIS, who will take us through the format for the rest of this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Cashwell, and thank you all for coming. I can't restate enough what Dr. Cashwell was saying of having you be here and you guys participating in this process is very helpful, even though it's an emotional process and it is tied to pulling a lot of the emotional strings and about communities potentially moving and things like that. It's really important to have your input and you guys following the process like you have through the course of the study. So a purpose of tonight's meeting, or tonight's public information session, is for you to learn how the process has been working. This is the same format as the last public information series that we had at the earlier part of this process, with some refined options. We have options D4 and E4, so the committee's looking at 2 options now. As things have evolved over time, they're at two different scenarios that they're looking at this point. But most importantly, we'd like you to complete an online survey. That survey is open now, and everybody probably picked up a sheet of paper when they came in. You'll see that there's you can go to the redistricting page, or you can even use this QR code. If you point a smartphone at it, it'll pull up the survey right away, and so you can access the survey. And you can tell people who couldn't make it tonight, or friends and family who couldn't make it, neighbors, that they can also participate in this this process in this survey. This is being live streamed, and also all the materials that are being presented tonight are also available online, so people can participate even if they're not here. So we are, just a little bit of background of who we are. We are Cropper GIS Consulting. We're based out of Ohio, but we do this kind of work with school districts and divisions all over the United States. Our specialty is redistricting, and we do a lot of demographic analysis as well, and other facility planning, but we're here with the focus on redistricting as stated by Dr. Cashwell. We've done work with other districts, like I said, all over. Recently done some work in Richmond and have some history here in Henrico, and also work in other divisions in Virginia as well as other places. So we bring to the table a lot of expertise and how committees work and working with different communities through tough decisions like this, and also bring the expertise of the technology. GIS stands for Geographic Information System. It's a mapping tool so we can analyze data, put data on maps and tables to efficiently inform committee members and the public about the impacts of moving things one way or the other, and what do the numbers look like with any particular scenario. So I have, Matthew Cropper, been working with the committee and facilitating all the meetings with the committee, and honored to be working with you guys as well as the committee on this process. So why are we here, and why is there a need to redistrict? And I'm just going to recap this. I think a lot of you probably have seen this because we cover these slides with every committee meeting as well. So we're here to efficiently use all available space and plan for future growth. There's an attendance boundary that's needed to be evaluated for Holiday Elementary. Holiday Elementary is currently very overcrowded, and they're doubling the size of that school. So that new capacity is gonna help resolve the overcrowding of that school, and then also looking to expand that boundary a little bit to help other neighboring schools that need some capacity relief. For the middle and high school levels, Highlands, J.R. Tucker and Highland Springs High School are being replaced on their existing sites with a little bit larger capacity at both buildings, and so those are also some of our tasks to account for those added capacity and also utilization of those schools, and evaluate neighbors and see if we can't balance utilization to account for the new construction as well as existing conditions that exist in schools that may be overcrowded. And finally, reduce concentrations of poverty while balancing a neighborhood or community school concept. So we have been studying information on economic disadvantagement and what is the current economic disadvantagement rates of schools versus any particular option. And so that's something that the committee has been evaluating as another section of data that they've been studying. Another piece that we are looking at, the committee had started with the parameters that had listed in the first slide, but there were some new things that were brought to the table as the committee continued their work. And one of them is a new elementary school that's being planned up in the northern part of the district, up in the Greenwood Longin area. And that's a school. That school is we are tasked to develop a zone for that building. Also, the middle school has an expansion, Hungry Creek Middle School, that we have incorporated into our analysis, and that expanded capacity is now listed on the tables and statistics, and we are accounting for an added addition that's being planned at Hungry Creek Middle School. So the elementary school is anticipated to be open in the fall of 2022, as well as the middle school expansion. Both of those are anticipated for fall of 2022. So the committee is focused and has been focused the whole time on a set of criteria. And so we've oriented the committee on these criteria. These are criteria that were established by the board, and these are basically the rules to follow as we evaluate moving lines. Every time the committee considers moving an area one way or the other, they always ask themselves, are we getting closer to adhering to these criteria, bringing closer to adherence to these, and also following the objectives. And so these are basically the rules to follow, and the best plan is going to be one that touches on these criteria and tries to improve things that from where they currently are, and try not to make anything worse in terms of utilization and feeder patterns and some of those elements. But the best plan is going to be one that touches on all these criteria as best as possible, knowing that there are going to be pros and cons with any plan, and that no plan is going to be perfect, and there are going to be certain elements of the criteria that you can't fully adhere to without deviating further from the other elements of the criteria. So these criteria are to use major roads and natural boundaries whenever feasible to define attendance zones. All reasonable efforts should be made to ensure contiguous geographic zones. So that means don't create a small pocket, like go into a attendance area and pull out a subdivision or a community and send it out of that zone to another school to create what they call an enclave or a satellite zone. None of that exists here in this particular district. All legal and judicial guidelines for maintenance of a unitary school system will be adhered to, so we are following the law. And efforts will be made to ensure an efficient system of school bus transportation. So we have been calculating distances of average distances of students to schools currently, and also per the option. And also transportation has been very helpful. We have transportation staff that's at almost every meeting, and they're working with committee members and answering questions as it relates to transportation, things about safety and where where buses typically travel, and does this route seem to be ideal, or is it really going to be a negative impact? So transportation has been very helpful as well. The next criteria is provision should be made to ensure the continuity of a child's K-12 progress. And so this really touches on school grandfathering. So this is basically students who are coming to their final year or two of their school tenure at a particular level, elementary, middle, or high school. They are allowed to stay at that school as long as they get transportation to the school. So you can see here in the underline it says, when the new boundaries take effect, the district will allow grades 5th, 8th, and 11th and 12th graders the opportunity to continue at their existing school as long as they get transportation. So those rising 11th and 12th graders can stay. They have to have their transportation, as well as rising 5th graders and 8th graders on the year that the zones are implemented. So that's a good gesture from the division. It's something that we commonly see, and the school district has offered that to the public to help ease the impact on redistricting. The other one is implementation of a rezoning plan over a span of several years, preferable, and minimizing the need for additional line changes for community in the near or immediate future. So I think that touches on why the new elementary school was brought in sort of mid-steam as we were working through the process. They wanted to make sure that we accounted for anything that was close on the radar, to make sure that you guys, that this committee doesn't make a change and then have to make another change and impact the same student or the same house more than once. And so really the focus is trying to make sure that the same student has some continuity, and that student doesn't get moved at one grade level and then they get moved again before they finish at a certain school. And so that's really what why that's part of the criteria. So looking at our timeline, as Dr. Cashwell said, we are getting close to the finish, and I know that the committee has worked countless hours, and members of the public, you guys have observed, see a lot of the same faces at the meetings, and listening to a lot of you and the feedback that you provided, very helpful, but it's been a long process, and I know that the committee is ready to see some closure to this, as well as I'm sure that a lot of members of the public are. You can see we've been working since September with the community-based group, the committee, and here we are at our public info session. This is the last series of public info sessions that we are planning to share maps with you, and after this, the committee is going to meet 3 more times and to finalize their recommendations to be presented to the board. And so we have a couple more meetings, one more in March 18th, and then April 1st and 15th, we have 3 more committee meetings total before the committee finalizes their process and it goes into the hands of the school board. And then the school board at that point has the ability to do whatever they would like with the recommendation. And that's when it becomes the school board's hands, and that phase, it transitions from the committee to the board, and that's when the committee's role is pretty much complete. So this committee is comprised of 2 different groups. We have a 46-member elementary group and a 21-person secondary group. These were parameters that the division gave us, and they wanted to make sure that there was good balance of people from all different communities to represent these committees and to give input about the local areas that they live in. And so, but it's a large group that we're working with, and in order to make it effective and make best use of their time, we have them broken into 2 different subcommittees for this work. So the charge to create the Grassroots Redistricting Committee was established by the board, and we formulated the group. The consultant selected the group and actually solicited applications and selected members to sit on this group as an objective third party. There's people from all different areas, all different walks of life, And so it's a very diverse group. People always, whenever we talk about a community or an area of a community, somebody knows that's around the table knows about the area, and they provide input about what it's like in that area, what traffic is like, where they can see students walking, and different things like that. So like the committee has been very helpful as a good foundation of for this process. But the committee is one method to engage the public. You know, like I've said and we've said all along, any member of the public is welcome to attend these meetings, the committee meetings, as well as these public info sessions, obviously. And we have seen lots of public members observing the meetings of the committee, and all the materials that the committee is looking at is all available online as well. So the committee's progress and what have they done so far? Like I said, the committee's work is almost complete. They have 3 more meetings to finalize their recommendations. They have met 8 times since September to review maps. From the very beginning, they were given blank sheets of paper, and they were looking at different concepts and creating their own maps and putting maps together and combining things. And so it started at a very rudimentary level, and it has continued to evolve into the 2 maps that you see right now. There were 18 different variations of maps that have been created since the start of this process. And so hats off to the committee for doing such a hard job and a heavy lift, knowing that there are people out there in the public who are not happy with how things are shaping in some options, one option versus another. And but the committee is staying focused on their objectives, and really proud of the work that they have done. They've looked at a lot of information and data. All that information is available to the public, and you'll see when you get out to the gym after this presentation, you'll be able to see maps that are posted up on poster boards, and then also the statistics and data are also on foam core boards, so that you can look at the information and see the same statistics and information that the committee has been focusing on as they continue to evaluate the options. These options are still draft. We are down to 2 maps. The committee keeps whittling it down and making adjustments and making refinements to align with feeder patterns. We don't anticipate major adjustments or whole-scale new maps coming out from this point on. But it should be noted that these maps are still draft, and they are subject to change, and other modification is potential and is possible as the committee finalizes their work. You guys, as members of the public, have been very helpful. We have received thousands, if not tens of thousands, of comments. That we have a general feedback form that's online that keeps getting used, and we share that with the committee, and we read all those comments. It's been very useful to share your input as the process continues and matures. Like I said, public members can observe all the meetings, and all the materials that the committee has in their binder is all posted online the day of the meeting. If actually try to do it more like a week before the meeting or a couple days before the meeting, so that the committee and the public can also be prepared with what's being shared and discussed at the upcoming committee meetings. So we do a really good job of making sure that you guys have access to all the same material that the committee is working with as they continue their process. There's also an interactive map that's available online. That you probably see that when you go to the district webpage, and for the redistricting, you'll see the interactive map that shows you can toggle on the different options, and you can even type in your address, and it'll tell you if you're impacted or not in a particular option. So that can be something that's helpful to communicate and understand how you or your neighbors may be impacted. So at their February meetings, both committees narrowed down to 2 options to present at this public information session. These were the 2 options that the committee felt best adhered to the overall objectives and criteria. So they've been working through maps, and they really have evolved. The maps have evolved into these 2 maps that you see right now. There have been different variations, but the committee's been looking at them, combining different concepts into maps, evaluating feeder pattern splits and small splits, and also utilization issues, really trying to get down to a couple of maps that best adhere to the overall criteria. And I think that they're doing very, very well. The draft of the maps you'll see out there, you'll see a scoring table that they look at. We have a table that sort of summarizes the scores of different factors and criteria. And if you look at the current versus each option, you'll see there's an improvement in almost every category, from utilization to distance to feeder pattern splits and things like that. And so it certainly is something to look at and evaluate. Although modifications are likely, it's not expected that brand new concepts or maps will be developed before the final recommendation is made. So what we try to tell the committee is this is the last opportunity to share these with the public. We don't want to go and end up moving communities that have not been considered before from this point on. We want to kind of look at what we have. I think the committee is really looking at these maps and making fine-tuned adjustments to them. But again, I don't want to speak for them, and is not sure what the final recommendation will be. So at the committee's last meeting, they also reviewed 14 specific area issues based on the school board and public feedback. So we asked the committee to send us feedback on what things they wanted to talk about at the last meeting. On top of that, we added to the conversations, some of the conversations that the board has been having. And so we narrowed it down to 14 different topics to discuss. Those topics were heavily discussed at the last committee meeting, but no changes were made. So what you see tonight are the same maps that were presented to that committee in February. And they're going to revisit these at the next committee meeting, some of these concepts to try to see if any other map changes are necessary based off of some of these topics. If you want to go look at some of those 14 topics, you can look at the PowerPoint presentation for the last committee meeting in February, and you'll see them all listed there. And that's something to give you an idea of what the committee is looking at for those 14 different topics of discussion. So as members of the public, like I said, everything is available online. If you go to henricoschools.us or .us/redistricting, that gets you right to the page where all of the repository of materials. Feedback form is on there, but really the feedback form is different from the survey. We have a special survey created to get input from you regarding these two options, and that's live now. It was kicked off today. And so you'll be able to find that survey on the web page as well. So we have a gallery walk, we have maps. There's 5 different sets of the same materials so that you can spread out, make sure that there's no bottleneck around maps. Committee members and staff, and also transportation and HCPS staff and consultants will be wearing lanyards. The yellow lanyards are some of the elementary group, and the orange lanyards are the secondary group. But they've been focusing on all 3 levels at this point, so feel free to talk to a committee member if you have any questions, as well as myself when you get around the maps. Although discussions are very useful to be had around the maps, we do encourage you to fill out the survey. So please share your thoughts with the committee and us, but also please put your input into the survey so that we can all benefit from every conversation that's being had tonight. When you look at the maps, the background color represents the options. You'll see the option name on the top. The background color represents the option, and there's a bold black outline on the map that shows you the current boundaries so that you can see how the options deviate from the current boundaries. And you'll see there's information on the map, such as number of students inside each little small census tract, which are kind of our building blocks for redistricting, and committee members can help orient you on those as well to help you understand how many students live in the different areas and different communities in the county. Like I said, the croppermap.com/Henrico is the online map, and that has the D4 and E4 maps on there right now for everybody's benefit. And like I said, the tables are also available out there, so all the statistics and data that the committee has been evaluating is also out there on phone course so that you can look at those as well. So online survey, one final note about that is that it begins tonight. It is available through midnight of March 15th, so that's Sunday. So on Monday, we're going to open up shop, download all the materials, and put together a summary report of the survey results and share that with the committee and also the public. So we ask you to fill out your survey, but the deadline is March 15th for that. And really looking looking for constructive input. This is not so much of a vote or like a popularity vote in that the most votes were for this option, so this is the one that you guys need to recommend. That's not the intent of this. It's going to be helpful to see how different communities prefer or don't prefer different options, and it's something that they certainly are interested in, but we're looking for constructive input, and anything that you see on the map that a map change that may be needed that helps resolve a subdivision that may be split, or anything that you observe that brings us closer to adhering to those criteria, that's really what the committee needs to hear. We feel like we've turned over almost every stone in the county in understanding concerns from the different communities, but I'm certain that there may be something that we haven't heard, but we really want to hear from you and understand what your concerns may be or your thoughts about the maps, and so that the committee can continue their work and finalize a recommendation for the school board. Next steps, the committee is going to review additional feedback from you and regroup. They're meeting, like I said, 3 more times. So March 18th, April 1st, and April 15th will be 3 more full committee meetings as they finalize their recommendations. The presentation of final recommendation is scheduled for April 23rd, 2020, and then the board is expected to vote on May 28th of 2020. So if you have any other further questions, we can be more than happy to talk with you outside. We're not having this is not the forum for we're not taking questions at the podium here. We'll address any questions from you around the maps and things like that, and just make sure you put your input on the survey so that everybody can benefit from that. And if the survey isn't enough, or you want to provide additional input, you can always participate on the general feedback form for people for us to continue to track. So thank you very much for coming out. We look forward to talking to you around the maps. We're going to go ahead and migrate out to the gym, which is right behind you, and the maps will be there, and more than happy and looking forward to talking with you guys.